Well, hey, my name is Ryan, and you're watching Creative Sound Lab, a weekly recording show where audio recording is an art form. This week's episode is huge. It's about recording acoustic guitar. And it's not the only way to record acoustic guitar. This is just my methods. I'm breaking it down into kind of a checklist of 1, 2, and 3 things you can be doing to hopefully narrow down the chaos, all the different options that you have to choose from in the middle of a recording session. There's so many ways to record acoustic guitar. This, by all means, is not the only way, and I'd love to hear in the comments if you have your own way of doing it from your end. I'd love to hear it. Now, this episode is so big that I might actually be using some of the footage from it into other follow-up episodes on some of these techniques. There's some really cool things happening here, and this is kind of skimming over a lot of material very quickly, but I want to kind of give it to you packed in one single episode on my methods for recording acoustic guitar. So the 3 different elements of today's episode is the scenario that you're recording acoustic guitar, the position of your microphones, and of course the selection of those mics, and the role of acoustic guitar in your mix. So let's check this out. This example demonstrates one of my go-to methods for recording a vocalist that plays acoustic guitar. I have the 414 in figure 8 mode, and therefore it's rejecting as much of the acoustic guitar as possible. So run to me, leave your own self and come to me. The acoustic guitar is recorded by a Neumann KM184, and it's aimed as far as possible away from the vocal. And although it doesn't reject the vocal completely, it does a pretty good job. This is also why I've been experimenting with putting this mic at the bridge position instead. We'll check out how that sounds next. Take this leap of faith. So take this leap of faith. So take this leap of faith. In this example, I'm demonstrating the concept of using 2 figure 8 microphones. This microphone, the AEA R88, happens to have 2 figure 8 microphones that are offset by 90 degrees. Therefore, if we pick a spot, we're able to point one mic directly at the vocalist and the other directly at the acoustic. Each mic has a null that's pointing at the element that we don't want to capture. Listen how each mic is only capturing one element and how good of a job it's actually doing. So take this leap of faith. So take this leap. The first scenario is for a guitarist that also sings at the same time. Perhaps they can't separate out the words from the guitar part, maybe they get confused of where they are in the song, but for whatever reason they have to play both the acoustic and sing at the same moment. Now, if you're able to record just the acoustic guitar without having the performer actually sing at the same time, then we can move on to our next section. And that is the positioning of the microphones. Granted that somebody isn't singing while they're playing their guitar. The first step that I do when recording acoustics is to plug one ear up with my finger and then swoop down and around the guitar, listening with my left ear and really listening how the guitar emits sound. Each acoustic guitar can be vastly different in how it sounds. Let's listen how each position has a unique effect and quality of the guitar just by moving the microphone around that instrument. You can also use this technique during a session if you have the sound of the microphone coming in through headphones and you can listen in and make evaluations in real time. You can also make recordings of this and go back in the control room and listen back and try to find your favorite positions that way. This segment demonstrates the difference of microphones and how they affect the sound. And this is a really quick segment here on this topic. But generally what I listen for in acoustic guitar is the top end smoothness and the way that the mids will translate in a mix. These three microphones are all at three different price points, and you can really hear the difference between the three. In this test, I wanted to show you the difference of speed of a microphone. Not necessarily the tonality, but the actual ability of the microphone to collect the quick transients, the sound of the pick hitting the strings of that acoustic guitar. Here we have an SM57 against an R88 ribbon microphone. It's important to note that just because the ribbon is dull doesn't mean that it's a slow microphone. We can always cut out some of the low end to add in the perception of high-end clarity. So for the third element is really to ask yourself, what is the role the acoustic guitar has in the mix? What is the role that it has in the song? If this were a timeline of a song, there's many times an acoustic will start out the song, okay? And these are just kind of sound waves. And eventually as the song develops, the acoustic guitar just kind of gets buried, okay? And this is a choice that we have to make, not with EQ during the mix process, but we really should decide on the positioning so that we get an aggressive sound. It could be an aggressive mid-range that we want to be able to hear the notes of that acoustic guitar poking through. So we want that aggressive sound. What kind of sound is able to do that based on our mic positioning? Okay, that's key. To be able to choose the sound at the mic, to be able to shape our mix and build our mix as we're recording. So if I were to say look at a mix from left to right, this is left and right on our mix, this would be center, so we have kind of the spectrum of our mix. This is kind of going on in my head as I'm building my mix, as I'm tracking the song. Is I know that, hey, kick and bass guitar is going to be right down the middle. Snare, vocal, all these things are going to be down the middle. Then I'm going to have some other things, maybe some room mics that'll be in stereo, so it's going to kind of build out sonically to the sides here. And then maybe acoustic guitars is kind of a building element, a thickening element to the song, right? We have maybe keyboard, everything building in. So we have to decide, well, if we want to just have the acoustic as a thickener out to the sides, then we need to choose a smoother but small sounding technique, something more to the bottom of the list that I have for you today. But if it's the feature of the song, then it really needs to be somewhere down the middle, and it needs to have a more big sound, and we have to accommodate everything else to that sound. It's placing a priority of that sound, of the largeness of that sound. Between that and the vocal, that's our priority. If it's not, then we need to choose sounds that are actually kind of smaller so that they mix a little bit easier, and how we kind of plan to use them during the mix. So I'm going to kind of demonstrate a few different miking techniques that I've used, starting out with the largest sounding acoustic tones, going from the very smallest acoustic tones. These are just based on mics that you use and positions that you use to make the acoustic sound really big and a part of the priority of the mix, or really small where it's accompanying something in the mix and adding a thickener to main elements of the mix. Here is a variety of methods that I use when recording acoustic guitar, going from the very large and big sounds all the way down to the small sounds that are excellent for layering sounds and hard panning sounds out to the far sides. You'll notice this R88 sounds huge. It's almost too big to be useful in a mix. This is an asymmetric pair with an over-the-head mic and an out-front mic. It's asymmetric and equidistant to the guitar's bridge. This position actually works great with a pair of SM57s. Here we have a mid-side technique out front, about 2 feet out from the guitar. Here's an example of a 414 on the bridge side of the guitar with a small diaphragm on the fret side of the guitar. It's a really common technique, and for some reason people love to do it, but I really haven't found this to be too useful. I either want one or the other. And if I want stereo, I'll be using one of the techniques that I just showed you. Moving on with even smaller sounds for acoustic, we have the small diaphragm around the bridge of the guitar. And now we have the small diaphragm around the 12th or 14th fret. Furthermore, we can make this acoustic guitar even smaller and smoother, great for layering sounds by moving the mic back. Okay, so this stuff really takes a lot of practice. Acoustic guitar is really pretty challenging, and to be honest, acoustic guitar is right up there with recording drums, recording vocal. It is one of the hardest things to really absolutely nail and get it perfect every single time. You always have a different sound coming in the door with new clients that always bring in something different. Each acoustic guitar sounds a lot different, depending on the wood types, the size of the body, even the strings or the age of the strings. All these different elements really play into the diversity that you have with the challenge of recording acoustic guitar. That's what makes it so challenging, but if you can really get great acoustic tones, it'll really be worthwhile. Let's review the 3 elements of today's episode. They were the scenario, the position, and the selection of mics, and the role that the acoustic guitar has in your mix. As always, you can download an outline of today's episode with all the pointers and tips compacted into a single source, a downloadable PDF as a reference guide for you. Just Just click the link on the screen or in the description below. I'll see you next week.